Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Small Business Saturday Tour. I'm Emma from the Small Business Saturday team, and with us today we have Ria Freeman. Hi, Ria.
Hi.
So we're going to learn all about how you can create a successful podcast, and Ria is amazing. She's a wonderful mentor and business owner and just all-round wonderful superstar. So I think you're going to learn some great things today. Do let us know where you're from in the chat. Hi, Ashley, nice to see you. We love to know kind of where you're tuning in from, so do say hello. If you have got some questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A because we will be coming back to those at the end. This will be recorded, so if you miss anything, don't worry, you can catch up at a later date. Thank you to BT for making this session possible and for supporting the tour once again. And a little reminder that we are here every Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. And if you attend 10 sessions, you'll get a free Christmas gift from us. That is all from me. I will hand over to you, Ria, and I will see you at the end for questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you very, very much. I'm just looking where everyone's from, actually. It's lovely. Ashley says it's cold in her shed today. So I've just walked the dog and it's so foggy and cold. I went out horribly underdressed and it's super cold. It needs to get that, that beautiful sunny wintry mornings is what we like. Let's see where everyone else is from. Please do say hi in the chat. There will be a bit of interaction here, so please do use the chat box too. Lucy is from Kent. Hello, Lucy. Elizabeth is from Anglesey. I have been to Anglesey. It's beautiful. Good morning. Mel is from Lincoln. Lovely again. Sandrine is from Nottingham. Another Kent. Gerbax is in Kent. V is in Winchester. Davina is from Essex. Pavani, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, is from the New Forest. Lisa's from Lincolnshire. Wow. Christopher's from Chirk. I've got another from Kent, Cornwall, Manchester. His shed. Oh gosh, I am so sorry, Ashley. I am sorry. I work with somebody called Ashley, spelt your way, who is female. So apologies. His shed. Sorry. Devon, East London, London, Central Bedford, Brighton, York, beautiful. One of my top places in the UK. Watford, Pembrokeshire, Purley, Inverness, London, Tunbridge Wells, wow, Essex. Oh, not a problem, not the first time. Oh, sorry. South Wales, Wiltshire, amazing. An Aussie from Essex, love that too. Hello, okay. So podcasts. Let's talk about podcasts. So this is a little bit about me if you don't know me. I'm called Ria Freeman. I am an award-winning podcaster, which is lucky given the conversation that we're about to have today. I'm also a small business coach and mentor. I do quite a lot of work with Small Business Britain, actually, with their program. So you may have met me before. I'm a social media expert, a multi-award winning PR advisor, currently up for another award, actually, if you fancy voting for me for Enterprise Nation. I'm a best-selling author. I have another book out in January, which is super exciting with Bloomsbury. And I basically love any excuse to chat, which makes podcasts really work quite well for me. So the first question I'm going to ask you today, we're going to talk about what we're going to talk about today, which is we're going to look at the size of the opportunity for podcasts. We're going to talk about why and how they work and how they can help to support your brand and your values and tick a lot of boxes. We're going to look at how to plan and launch a podcast. And we're going to look at how to create engaging content for said podcast and also how to grow your podcast. So we've got a lot to cover in our hour, but I have faith in us. So our first question, I'm going to look at the chat. So the first question is, who has a podcast already? So if you can put a little yes or a no, or just a Y or an N, I'll be able to understand that in the box. It doesn't matter if you haven't at all, that's completely fine. Okay, lots of no's, that's ish, love that. Oh gosh, lots of no, this is all good. Starting one, amazing. This is all good. This is all good, people. Yes, we've got a yes, got no, but a YouTube influencer, love that. Okay. So the next question, which I'm kind of hoping is a yes, because otherwise you're probably not going to enjoy this podcast. You're not going to enjoy this that much, is who would like to have a podcast? Oh no, I'm too shy. Oh, Ashley, we're going to sort that out. By the end of this session, you'll have loads of podcast concepts. Lots of yes. Got me's definitely are. This is what we like. This is what we like. Yes, and YouTube. Love that, Helen. Maybe. That's okay. You can be on the fence. That's fine. Yes, please. Audio only. That's absolutely fine. I'm intrigued about how podcast can benefit me and my brand. No problem at all. We are going to cover that today. Amazing. So this is my podcast. It's called Small and Supercharged because that is the name of a Facebook group I have and a membership I have, and it's aimed at small business owners and helping them be better, helping them to promote themselves better. Also learning from lots of stories that can help you to kind of develop and understand your business. Whoops-a-daisy, more. Sorry, I was trying to turn the chat off, press the wrong button. So my podcast has had over 250,000 downloads. So, you know, it's not exactly Diary of a CEO, but I'm not exactly Stephen Bartlett. So, you know, perspective. And actually it has achieved a lot for me, which I will talk to you about as well. It's regularly in the marketing charts. I've been really lucky to have some incredible guests on the podcast, and that has provided me personally with lots of opportunities to learn and to find out about people, about how they work, what makes them tick. It's also given me lots of other opportunities because sometimes when you say you have a podcast, if you have a podcast and you put the work in, it can lead you on to other things as well, which is great. And it's also given me the chance to present myself as an expert because I do know my stuff. I know my stuff when it comes to my specialist areas, and having a podcast where you're sharing that information with people on your terms without any filter is very, very powerful. And it's also been really useful to help me build my brand. But it's hard work, and that's not a criticism. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but it isn't easy. You do have to put the work in. To get the rewards, you have to put the work in. You have to put the graft in. So just to manage your expectations there, it can be hard. But let's look at the size of the opportunity because it's huge. There are, when I looked at this and did the stats, which was thesocialshepherd.com/blog/podcast-statistics, it said that there are 4.25 million podcasts in existence. That may be a bigger number now. And that 32% of UK adults listen to one podcast a month. I don't know about you, I listen to a lot. When I'm walking the dog, I usually have something in my ears. I'm listening to that as I'm going. If I'm in the car on my own, I have a series of podcasts lined up because, you know, the radio and the channel surfing is quite stressful for me. So it's a huge opportunity. Now on Apple, there are over 460,000 active podcasts, and 93% of the listeners stay for a whole episode. So there's lots of really, really good stats there. Lots of things, lots of points of interest, lots of things that should make you really consider this as a good place to be. But why do they work? We can see the size of the opportunity, but how do they work for you? Now, the good thing is with a podcast is they are free. So people can listen to them for free. They don't have to commit to anything from a financial point of view. There are some podcasts where you can pay like a small amount, like a subscription. I think How to Fail, you can pay and have extra episodes, or some you can pay and you don't have the ads. But the point is that they are free for people to enjoy. So there's no barrier to entry from a cost point of view, which can be really useful. Authority. You can use them to help build your authority in your specific fields. What you want to be known as an expert for, you can make your podcast reflect that. So you're sharing your knowledge, and being that voice, that reliable, dependable, considered voice regularly can really help to build up that authority. It can help people to get to know you. And this is what I found particularly useful. Because when I do a podcast, I sound exactly like this. I speak exactly like this. I am exactly like this. It's helped people to get to know me without me knowing that they're looking at me. So it can be useful if I'm thinking about working with someone, or I want to know something about someone and they've got a podcast, I will listen to it. I'll listen to how they present themselves. I'll listen to how they speak. I'll listen to their thought processes. And that I find really, really useful. Oh, let's have a look. Sorry. I don't use Apple. So what other apps can I use to do podcasts, please? Oh, in terms of where you can publish them. So with my podcast, when I publish it, it goes to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, sorry. It also goes onto YouTube, and it goes onto lots of different places. So don't worry about where people can find your podcast. You'll be able to pick lots of different options. That was just a stat from Apple just to show the size of the opportunity. But don't worry, you can put your podcast on lots of different places, but we will talk about the nuts and bolts of how to do that a little bit later on. So, but also, when people decide to listen to your podcast, they've made an active choice to listen to you. People don't listen to a podcast by accident. They have, they follow podcasts on their phone. And then when a new one is downloaded or uploaded from the creator's end, it gets downloaded on their phone and they can listen straight away, or people get pointed in that direction. It's not like they've sort of stumbled across a podcast when they were scrolling through social media and decided to listen for an hour. They're making a really conscious choice to listen. It can be a brilliant way to showcase your skills, your passions, your values, what makes you tick. So again, further cementing that expert status and giving people a chance to get to know what you're really, really good at and what you can help them with. You can also understand your potential customers better through feedback. So when you ask for feedback, firstly, really make sure you do want that feedback, but you can find out more about like what are their pain points. If you're doing a podcast, a lot of mine is about marketing, mindset, PR, social media. If I say to people, what do you want me to talk about? What would be useful to you? And they start talking about specific things that they're struggling with, I can talk about that on the podcast, but I could potentially develop products around it. I could develop services around it. I could develop downloads or courses. So it gives me really useful feedback from that point of view. And even the language that is used when people explain their problems can then be used in a positive way, so people can really relate to and connect with what I'm talking about. So now we know a bit more about why it's a good thing to do. Let's talk about how to plan it. So we're starting from our blank canvas here. Now, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, why are you starting a podcast? What reason are you starting a podcast for? And if you'd like to use the chat and tell me why, well, answer any of these questions if you like, or all of them. Why are you starting that podcast? Who do you want to speak to? And what do you want to talk about? Just thinking I'm going to start a podcast because is not particularly useful, because particularly when it gets tough, when it is hard, when you think I have no time this week to record, but I need to record because I've committed to recording every week. Why are you doing it? Are you doing it to educate people about something that you do, or share knowledge connected to something that you do as a service, or showcase people and what they do? Who do you want to speak to? Who are your demographic that you are trying to target with that? Are they small business owners? Are they dog owners? Are they parents? And what do you want to talk to them about? I'm going to just open up the chat because we've got some chats going on. Okay, we have a little quick drink. Right, let's have a look. To expand my network, my client base, and to educate people. Excellent. My podcast is to help UK business owners build better business in bite-sized 15-minute episodes to reduce overwhelm. Love it. I have a bricks and mortar shop, so to advertise and also explain what we do. I think with that one, Sarah, brilliant, but I think I would probably slightly spin it, because if someone said to you, listen to a podcast, if I said to you, come and listen to a podcast about me, it would be quite, I mean, I wouldn't listen to a podcast about me. But if it's that your shop serves the local community, if it's that your shop is designed to find the best of the best, I think maybe taking it slightly one step back from specifically about your shop, but about more of the kind of why behind it and sharing more of that through stories would be really useful. To talk about aspects of creativity, dealing with career change, and build an audience to create a community. Love it. The way to attract my customer, educate, share something. I am into a lot of niches. What should I talk about? What niches are you into? And which one do you want to do more work in? If you could give us a bit of background, I think we can help. I started mine for mums in business or work to help inspire others and encourage that having children is not the end of your career passion. Flipping love that, Esther. Could not agree more with that. Wanting to share coaching tools and exercises to help people work through challenges and dilemmas. Brilliant. Children's fiction does not have a large platform, as discussed on Radio 4. So we've added to that by creating a podcast about kids' books. Excellent. Mental health and wellbeing in the workplace, to share knowledge of health and wellbeing. Radio and TV producers, animation and gaming developers. Show off my knowledge, the person behind the brand. Hello, Neil from Worthing. A YouTube viewer said they listened to my videos whilst working, so I see an opportunity. Absolutely, Gareth. I mean, you could, even if you've already done the videos, you could potentially lift the audio and make that into a podcast. You don't have to necessarily do it twice to create a really good podcast. Generate awareness of my industry, publishing, and what goes on behind the scenes. Oh my goodness, Becca, there is so much that goes on behind the scenes, isn't there? As I said in my intro, I've got a book coming out in January with Bloomsbury. I self-published my first one, but this is the first one that's been done with a publisher. The work that the publishers do is insane, incredible. Educate, engage, alternative approaches to health, engage with the modalities and holistic practitioners for midlife women. Love it. To further educate in dog training and discussion around different breeds and their individual needs. That sounds brilliant. I've got a dog, very into that. So I've created a community. Oh, brilliant. I love it. I love a pun. And I'm a traditional wool shop with a twist, teaching heritage skills in a modern way. Oh, that would be so cool. That would be brilliant. That'd be brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. My podcast is to amplify the voice of my clients and networks, more people listening to each other's lived experiences as wisdom, introduce new products to the manufacturing industry. I want to connect entrepreneurs around the world, especially expats, fitness, graphic design, wellness and motivation, creativity and such. I'm reading through these because you've put the time into comments. So, and I love this. Ours is a way of establishing our expertise and to help people feel hope. Our podcast, Positivity, a Work in Progress, shares positive psychology definitions of different things we all feel, from happiness to grief, and how we have used our skills to continue to live with hope and happiness. Mine will feature best in the industry guests, where we talk about common problems owners face with dogs and how we solve them. To share how effective and fun a full immersion English language courses for business English learners who want rapid boost to their English speaking and listening skills while having cultural experience in a lively and diverse city of Bristol. The business that I want to do the podcast, oh, it's all gone. It's all gone a bit weird. Oh, I've got it. The business that I want to do the podcast for is my genealogy, and also tourist guiding. So showing off locations that I visit, that might not always be accessible. Also showing off the locations that I visit, do the research and take photos for future reference. I think we might have found a link here. Richard, connect, because V is an author of inclusive children's books. So that could be quite cool. To share my knowledge of financial literacy, self-growth and wellness, and holistic approach for women empowerment that's sustainable, build a tribe and authority. I want to learn by way of having a podcast, but also speak to unsung heroes of our community. Published in 2020, the Club Hub podcast shares the latest news and stories from the children's activity industry, now with 4 seasons and over 50 episodes to listen to. Love it. Mine is called Creative Like Us, talking to creatives of colour. Wow, you lot are incredible. So amazing. I'm going to just shut that down. So how to plan. We've got our why. Why are we doing it? We're thinking about our audience, who are we talking to, and we're talking about what we want to talk about. Now, we also need to think a little bit deeper about what value are we going to add. So a bit like when you start a community on social media, if you decide to start a Facebook group, it's not about you, it's about the community and what the community needs. So with my podcast, although I am the host of the podcast and it is a really good marketing tool for me, I occasionally deliver a personal story, but it's always got a lesson to it. But I'm thinking about what my target audience need to hear, whether it's a hack for how to do something better on social media, or if it's talking about Black Friday, or if it's talking about a marketing thing or a PR thing or a trend to jump onto, or how to use trends, or sharing those stories with amazing people who are really inspiring and can help people to see that they can achieve huge things. You need to also think when it comes to planning about how often you're going to commit to doing this. Are you going to do weekly, twice a week, twice a month, once a month? What are you doing? And when you set that schedule, it's important that wherever possible, you stick to it, because people do come to rely on it and to look forward to it, which is exactly what you want. But that means you do have to commit to doing it. And then when you've got this all sort of planned out, just do a bit of a check and make sure it aligns with your values and your goals, because it's important that it does if it's going to be a good show of what you do to help attract your target audience. And now let's just touch on how they can grow your brand, because we know that it's important to do this because it's a lot of work. You will have to pay for things like hosting, potentially editing. It does take time. So how can they grow your brand? Well, the first thing is you can control the narrative. If it's your podcast and you're talking about what you want to talk about, you control the narrative. So what things you want to say to people, things you want people to understand and get a hold of, you can control that. By having a podcast, you stand out from the crowd. There are a lot of podcasts out there, but most people, when we look at our niche and our group, who we work with, there's not loads in that group. And another thing is, by staying in it, a lot of people will publish like a couple of episodes and get bored, but having that staying power makes you different. So stick it out. And it does make you different. It gives you another point of interest and can also allow you to contribute to things because you've just got a different angle. I mean, obviously I'm giving this talk about podcasts now, but I've been invited to events to talk about podcasting on more than one occasion, events that actually, if it was just some of the other things I did, I may not have got in. They're accessible, they're on their phone, they are free. They're also really easy to share. If you like a podcast, one thing that quite a few people do is, say screenshots, share to stories and tag us. But they're easy for you to share as the person behind the brand as well, whether you put that on a newsletter, you put it on your social media, however you do it, you can share. They can be collaborative. If you work with people, if you interview people, it can be a really lovely collaborative opportunity, which then they can share. And also it can help to grow your brand by association. So if you start to interview high caliber guests in your space, it can introduce them to you, and by association, it can help to grow your brand and help people to see it in a slightly different light. It's a bit like if you get an award for something, people seem to automatically think that you're better than you were the day before. You're not, you're exactly the same and you're as brilliant as you ever were, but people seem to almost think it's like a rubber stamp. And the same works when you interview people, kind of by association. They kind of think, you're a good egg. So it can be really powerful for that as well. You can also repurpose podcasts. So yeah, we've got the audio there. You can put them onto YouTube. If you film them, they're even better, but mine go onto YouTube automatically, so you can just listen to them through YouTube. But you can also repurpose in terms of, you can make reels for social media, or reels or TikToks. You can take the transcripts, make them into show notes, or make them into more detailed blogs, or even divide into a number of blogs or content like that. You can actually repurpose it and pull out different quotes to have on social media as well. It allows you to be seen as the expert in your field, which, let's be honest, is what we all want. And there's massive scope and reach. Podcasts are global, so it really helps to get in front of a lot of different people, which is really useful as well. So let's carry on. So let's talk about how to launch now. So we've done our planning, we know where we're going, how to launch. Now, the first thing you need to do is think about what you need to record it. Now, the good news is that whilst we see on social media a lot amazing, beautiful recording studios, all you actually need is a device that will record audio. So that could be, obviously I'm speaking to you through my computer now. You've got a phone which records audio notes. I've actually done a podcast on a phone before. So basically, the cost to get involved in a podcast from a recording point of view can be zero. It can be what you've already got. Now, if you want to improve the quality of the audio, because we know that podcasts are an audio medium, you can, if you're using your phone or your computer and you don't have a budget, you can look to get some earphones can really help. The ones with a kind of microphone, they can really improve the quality quite significantly. Or you can get external microphones. So I've got It's got blue written on him. I think he's a Blue Yeti microphone, which is good. Lots of different microphones, lots of different setups you can do. Whoops, a daisy. I think I've broken that. It's fine. It's fine. Also think about the surroundings you're in, because that can be really dramatic from the audio point of view. So for example, you don't want it to be a room with all the hard surfaces because it can make it quite echoey. Cut out all background noise. That will help to improve the audio. So to record your podcast, you need a device that you can record onto. And something, if you want to improve your audio, brilliant. And don't get me wrong, if you find that the podcast medium is really working for you, you'll want to improve your kit, you'll want to increase the quality of your audio, you'll want to make sure you've got the best microphones, all of that stuff. I have a Blue Yeti. Yes, that's the one that I've got. It's great. I just for somehow have just loosened something that's gone wrong. Fern Cotton Sitsendra Duvet. Absolutely. Actually, if you that's not a bad shout at all, because you reduce the echoiness, so that's spot on. With the virtual microphone Krisp help for audio quality, I have never used that. Does anyone else know what that is? I'll have a look and write that down. And we're going to look at that when we go to questions. Hang on. Is there a good cheap wireless microphone? Well, some people have, I don't know how cheap they are, I'll be honest, like the clip-on ones, what they're called, lavalier. I think that might be the word. They clip onto their, I mean, I've got a wired one, which, to be honest, the audio quality on that is a bit ropey. But if you look at TikTok and things like that, yeah, Rode, the ones that clip on, lavalier, get in there. Really cool. They can be really good, actually. I've been really impressed with the sound quality on some of the clip-on. I think it is definitely a Rode one. Yes, I've just heard about Krisp. Krisp is an AI noise reduction application. Brilliant. So that's, yeah, anything that can just improve the quality of the sound, experiment with it as well. If you think, well, will this help? Test it. You can buy from Amazon. Yeah, mine was from Amazon, actually. My Blue Yeti job was from Amazon. I'm a tourist guide, and one thing that is highly recommended is a microphone cover. Yes, absolutely. Those fluffy things can really help to reduce any wind noise, because that can be brutal. There's a thing even with video, that if your audio quality is bad on a video, people will switch off before they will switch off if the visual quality is bad. I think it's quite offensive to your ears. You try and listen, you're like, what's going on? So yeah, anything you can do, but microphone covers, not being in the wind, all good. I have a basic Scarlett setup. I use it for VO and podcasting. I use Riverside to record everything. I'm sure they are available without helping Jeff to go back to the moon. Check out PlaySpot. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You don't have to go to Amazon at all. You can have a Google, you can go to other places, but just for, if someone doesn't know where to start, you can also get them from Amazon. But yes, they are also available from other places that aren't Amazon. So we know what we need for our recording. So editing now. How will you do this, and will you do it yourself? So I have someone that edits my podcast for me. They use what do they use to edit them? GarageBand, I think, which is an Apple bit of software, but there are lots of different ones online. I'd love to know, people that do have a podcast, what do you use for editing? Because I've got a client who records straight into editing software just through the computer, which is really useful for her. Let's see what you're saying. GarageBand, Audacity, yeah, Audacity is a good shout as well. Riverside, trying to rack my brains for what she uses. We had a Studio One. So there's lots of different options, InShot. I think I would just recommend, don't edit, hate my own voice, so just do it, go with it raw. And actually, I think there's quite a lot to be said for that as well. I think if you're happy to just share your thoughts without being edited, brilliant. You know, you do you. I use Audio Joiner to put sections together from sponsors. Oh, that's a good shout. That's a good shout. So there's lots of different options for you. And then there's hosting. So that's when you've got your audio file that's been edited that you want to push it out into the world. Now I actually use two for different things. So I use Libsyn, which stands for Liberated Syndication, for my Small and Supercharged podcast. And I've got a membership group that has a private podcast. And I use Captivate for that. Now, I think I could also use Captivate to put it out, to put my other podcast out into the world. It would probably save me a small fortune. But that is on my list of things to do. So I use Libsyn for the podcast. I'd love to know what you use. I know there's loads of different hosting ones. I know there's, oh, sorry, can you say them again? Which ones? Sorry, Debbie, the hosting ones or the editing ones? I'm happy to read through anything. Just let me know what you need. Hosting, right? So I use Libsyn, Libsyn. You pay for how much you upload every month. So it starts at not very much and scales up the more you upload. I also use Captivate. I think it's captivate.fm, I think, for my private podcast for my membership group. Ashley uses Spotify for podcasters. Can you self-host? I don't actually know the answer to that, because what a host does is it also pushes your podcast out to the different platforms. So I'm sure in theory that you could. So with mine, I go through and I tell it all the bits I want it to be on. So I say I want it to go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube. There's loads of different ones. I think like Heart Radio or Heart something or other. Yeah, mine goes through YouTube as well, Davina. Yeah, so you can choose the ones that you want. There are other services. There are free hosting services as well. Some of them are very limited on what you can upload. I think some have got ads, but there are lots of different options for you there too. So you can get started on this for free, to be honest. You can get started for very, very little. Or it could be, if you wanted to do it completely free, you could put it up on YouTube for free and do it that way. We've mentioned the different platforms that we're available on. I know with Libsyn, I literally go and tick boxes. It takes a little while to get it to start with, but then it automatically uploads. So when I upload a podcast, I don't have to go through and go, I want it on that, that, and that, and that this week. It's already set up. Elizabeth says, need to look up which ones has closed captions that can cope with Welsh. Fair enough. No, fair enough. When you've also decided you're going to launch, it's good to get some recordings in the bags. Do some in advance, because it takes the pressure off. I like to, in a perfect world, and I do manage to do this from time to time, I got a batch of lovely interviews recorded. And it kind of, when I knew I was going to be really busy with work and not have, those windows of time to organize it. See, the organizing takes much longer than the recording. I got lots of lovely ones in the bag. I got them all edited. I got them all uploaded. Happy days. Then they kind of run out and you think, oh God, I need to get on it again. But if particularly for starting, you can get a few in advance, it just takes the pressure off a bit. Sometimes people release a few to start with, like week 1, day 1, so people know more about what they're going to be listening to, but you do you. And you also need to rethink about the promotion of it, because it's one thing putting the podcast up, but then how are people going to know about it? So you're going to need to have some cover artwork so people know about the podcast. You need to make sure it's really all the information is really well filled in on the places that you're putting it, so people know why they should listen. You also need to be promoting it through your social media, through your newsletter, through collaborations, through anything you've got available to you. Make sure you promote it, because you've put the work in and now you want people to listen. Even if your inner voice is saying, but we don't want anyone to listen. You do. You've put the work in. You want them to listen. How long should your podcast be, or is it an impossible question? It's a good question, Lucy. I think it depends. I would always go for like the quality of it. So I've got some podcasts that are 15 minutes long, that are good at 15 minutes, that would be horrific at an hour. And I've got some hour-long podcasts that actually they can't be any shorter. They're usually interviews. If you think of, again, Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, if you think of Grace Beverley, if you think of Elizabeth Day, their podcasts are, I'm sure I've listened to one with Stephen Bartlett, it was like pushing 2 hours. So I think it depends on so many different factors, but don't think, oh God, it's got to be an hour long. Oh God, it's got to be half an hour long. It can be 10 minutes long. It can be 5 minutes long. I've listened to lots of really short ones as well. Yeah, Joe Rogan's usually 3 hours. Exactly. My laptop is threatening to restart. I'm trying to postpone it, but if it does happen, I'll be back. It's okay, V. Don't worry. We understand Tech is fun. I listened to The Rest is History, and their podcasts are always about an hour. Yeah, it's about what it's about, not, I wouldn't get too hung up on the length. I would think more about the content. Which we now are covering. How are we going to create engaging content? So a bit like when we think about any form of marketing, because we're thinking about this as a form of PR, about a form of marketing, a form of brand awareness, as well as providing content. But we need to think about what people want to hear. So what do your target audience want to know about? What would be interesting to them? What would make them tune in week after week after week, and ideally tell their friends? You can involve your community in it as well. Speak to them and find ways to get listeners involved. This could be you do shout outs to people. It could be that you read out reviews they've given you. It could be that you even invite them on to be guests to talk about things that are related to what your podcast is all about. But speaking to them and finding out what they want is a really important thing. You can also ask your guests to share, which can help improve engagement, because then your podcast is being shown to their audience. So if you've interviewed somebody, ask them to share with their audience too. Make imagery, make a social media content that's got both of you on. Tag them as a collaborator in posts. All these things can really, really help. We need to promote it as well. Use social media to ask questions and create engagement. Also test different content styles, like we should do with our social media anyway. Is a video good? Is this good? Is a still image good? Is a carousel image good? Test, test, test. See what works for you. See what improves your downloads. See what improves the clicks. Have a go. Ask for what you want as well. I think sometimes we try and be quite cryptic with people, and we don't need to be. If you want them to review and rate the podcast, ask them. Say you'll give them a shout out, say you'll read their review and you'll thank them. And also keep going. It is not an overnight thing, sadly. It takes time to build and grow and develop, and also develop what you're doing. As your business grows, as your business evolves, you might find the podcast takes a slightly different route as well. I know that I'm at that stage with mine now, where actually I'm going to be evolving it quite a bit, which is fine. But hopefully I've built up that kind of brand equity that people will evolve with me. But yeah, you've got to keep going. Consistency matters, showing up matters, and stuff does not happen overnight, sadly, but it's the truth. So how do we grow it? Consistency, I bleat on about this, but consistency is super important. Show up. Speak about relevant topics, keep your finger on the pulse and speak about relevant issues, because then people say, oh, there was a thing I saw in the news and I've heard a podcast about it, or this thing's happening and I found out more about it here. It can be helpful. It can really loop in well with current stories. So think about how you can speak about relevant topics, either relevant to your community or things that are on the news and relevant on a global scale. Become a trusted source. Don't abuse anyone's trust. To do this, you need to be honest, genuine, research your material, just create really good stuff. So when people do find you, they want to stay with you because you know that you are helpful, you are supporting them, and that's really powerful. Guests can be a really great way of growing. High profile guests especially can improve not just how people view you, because we talked about that association, and also how they view your expertise, but also it can get you in front of more people if they share it as well. You need to promote all the time, try different ways, and experiment with things. So different ideas for titles, or how you do show notes, or how you promote the show notes, different guests, different forms of imagery. There's loads of different things you can do to, like with social media, like with marketing, it's always a test, 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 test. I'm just gonna quickly check the comments because on the chat. How do people find your podcast? Do you have to use keyword analytics? Yes. So when you are searching for a podcast, if you type in you want to listen to a marketing podcast, you need to make sure that you're doing all you can to help people find you. So that's one side of it. Think about the descriptions you're using. Think about those keywords that you're using so people can find you. Think about your title, but also promote it through your social media, through your email newsletter, through your networks, through your website. Make sure people can find you and make it easy for people to find you through lots of different ways. Podcast gives you a much more personalized relationship with your audience. You feel you almost know the people. 100%. I've had people that have approached me at places, at shows and things, and they're chatting to me like we're friends, which is lovely. I don't know them. I've never met them before. They've never met me before. But because they've listened to the podcast, they feel like they do know me. They know kind of what makes me tick. They know how I think. They know how I speak, which is great, because actually when you're looking to develop a relationship, you've broken down a lot of barriers already. 2 years in and things haven't grown, especially. I agree overnight is not an expectation, but how long before you stop because it isn't a thing? Have you tried different ways to promote it, Richard? Different ways to grow it, different ways to get it in front of people? Have you looked to tweak the content slightly so perhaps you're doing more interviews with people and they're sharing as well? Putting a voice to the work and then feeling like they know you really enhanced my business. Yeah, would really enhance my business. Sorry, absolutely. Can you or do you make money from a podcast? You absolutely can. You can do things. So what I tend to do, but I might change this in the future. There are a few different ways you can monetize. One is ads. I don't do ads at the moment. I promote my own stuff through the podcast. So my own books, my own membership course, my own courses that I do. So that's how I would monetize it. But I am thinking very seriously about having sponsored slots. So I would make money through it that way. So there are ways that you can monetize. I think for a lot of people, it's a brilliant marketing tool that then leads someone to buying things, but also getting ads. If you've got a good engaged audience of the target audience of the target market, there we go, for the brands you want to pay for advertising, that can be really useful as well. So we've got some action points before we move on to questions. So get your questions in the box because we will come to that very shortly. Honestly, it's like I haven't stopped talking for 45 minutes. So have a plan. Know what you want to share and why you want to share it. Get out there. Know where to host, how to share, how to encourage others to share, and keep pushing to get your podcast in front of people and in front of the right people. Be consistent. Keep going. Make sure you have the time to do it and keep going with that. And try and test things. Keep trying and testing to help you gain traction. We need to think also about the quality of the audio, make sure it's as good as it can be, and that your editing is good too. If you're doing editing, make sure it's as good as it can be. Again, this doesn't mean you shouldn't try, as the last point says about perfection is subjective and you'll evolve as you go, but do the best you can and then get it out there. And also make sure it's getting distributed in all the right places because you want people to be able to listen. So this is me with my first book. You can find me on Instagram. I'm at Ria Freeman PR. LinkedIn, I'm Ria Freeman. I'd love to connect with you. Website, riafreemanpr.co.uk. And podcast is Small and Supercharged if you fancy having a listen to that. Actually, I did one. This week's was a solo with me. The week before is a brilliant one with Rachel Watkin, who is the lady behind the Tiny Bot Company. She is a force of nature and incredible. So I definitely recommend you go and listen to that if you're feeling a bit meh. But there's loads of really good ones on there. So I'd love you to listen. So should we head to question time? Oh, right, we've got questions. Emma, shall I take the questions or what's the cunning plan at this point in the game?
Hello, thank you so much. Feel free to dive straight into questions if you like, or I can share some with you. If
Go
you
for it. I'll have a drink. There we go.
Sure, go have a drink, have a break. Thank you so much. That was such a great session and everybody was so engaged in the chat. So I'm sure everybody else had such a great time. So thank you for that.
No problem.
So, first question is from Ashley. My podcast is a weekly live on LinkedIn where I can chat to people who can help business owners. I've done over 300 episodes. Wow, that's amazing. Well done, Ashley. I wondered if you'd like to be a guest one week, Ria.
Yes, would love to. Would absolutely love to. Yes, please.
Oh, amazing. Well, that's an easy answer. Great first question.
Yeah, please ping me an email or contact me through LinkedIn or however, and that would be amazing. I'd love to.
Yes. Next question is from Chris, who wants to know, is it best to do a podcast once a week? Is it best to do it at the same time or weekdays, weekends best?
Yeah, so I do mine once a week and I release it on a Wednesday morning. I think it creates a bit of consistency, and I schedule it so I usually upload it and do all the faffing on the Tuesday, and then it releases when I tell it to. So you can schedule it. You don't have to be like there at 10 past midnight pressing go. But I think if you can, it's quite nice for you as well, because you know how that rhythm needs to work, when you need to have it done for. I think it's good if you can release on the same day so people know when they can expect it.
Definitely. Yeah, great. Another question is about Patreon, and somebody's asked what buying a coffee on YouTube means. Like, how does that kind of work?
Okay, so buying a coffee with people is when I don't have this platform set up for me. So if someone does and you're really good on it, please do feel free to pop that in the chat. But it's when when people say, "Oh, can I just pick your brain?" And you think, "Ugh, I hate that phrase. Actually, makes me a little bit sick." But so instead of just doing it for free, they basically give you some money, as in the equivalent, I said, essentially, of buying you a coffee, but it can be a very expensive coffee, to spend some time with you and get to find out more about what they want to ask that question about. So I think it's actually a brilliant idea. Probably something I should look into. I'll look into it. But yeah, it's not like they're booking a coaching call with you or booking a long session, but they're giving you some money to have a call with them. Or if it is something like it could also just be a way of supporting the person. So when we talked about how to monetize this kind of thing, it could just be that you're giving that person some money because you really like their content and you found a way about that. Quick look at the chat and see. Buy a coffee is super thanks. They give you a tip, but a bit is taken by the provider. There's also coffee, kofi.com. There we go.
And on that note, another question: can you or how do you make money from podcasts?
So you can do it through sponsorship. So if you have some companies that you think align really well with your audience, you could approach them potentially and say, "We've got this opportunity." There will also be providers when you have when you've got to a number of downloads that people will be happy to kind of sell ad space on your podcast, or you could use it to promote what you do. So you could use it as a way to promote what you do, and therefore you're monetizing it because you're getting more business that way.
Another question is about how long you should kind of wait before, I don't want to say giving up, but maybe
Yeah.
this is for you.
Oh, it's hard. It's a really hard one. I think the thing with podcasts is that it is hard. I think I've done over 300 episodes now, and it's flipping hard. And the work you put in, and then sometimes you look at the downloads and you think, "Oh, it should be better than that." But I try and give myself a bit of a shake and go, "No, come on, we've got this." Um, you also need to think about the quality of those that are listening and what it's converting. So if you're putting out podcasts and okay, you don't get loads and loads of people listening, but those people that listen are then the ones that are buying your products and services, then to me, that's really, really valuable. So it's not an easy answer at all, which is not helpful. It's not an easy answer, and it depends. Are you thinking that actually that's not really working for you, so you want to put the time in to try something else that you think would work? Like what, there's lots of different reasons, and you've got to, it's got to work for you in the end. And there's no shame or harm in saying, "You know what, I tried really hard and it didn't work. I'm going to try something else." Actually, that's quite sensible.
Are there
But
any analytics tools that you suggest that you can kind of work out this sales come from this person listening to this episode, for instance?
I haven't found any, because of people listen on an audio point of view. But I do have people that ping me direct messages or send me an email, said, "I listened to this on the podcast." And so that's useful. But often when we think about how we make sales, it's there's sort of a number of touch points before someone decides to give you their money. So your podcast could be a touch point, a bit like attribution through things like Facebook. They say, "Oh yeah, that sale came from Facebook." Well, it might have done, but it also might have been that person listened to a podcast, read a blog, did this, and then when they saw that last thing, they then clicked on it. But actually, if they hadn't had all those things before, if they hadn't had that podcast, this and that, they may not have taken that step.
Yeah.
So it's tricky.
It's a really good way of looking at it like that, though. And I feel that's such a nice touch point, isn't it? It's not, it's not an email. It's like it's something quite personal. So I could. How do people find your podcast, Ria? Is there any keyword analytics that you use?
I mean, I tell people about it a lot. It is when you put a podcast up, you put what categories are relevant. So mine's marketing, which is, so if you look in marketing, you could find it. If you type in my name, you'll find it. If you type in Small and Supercharged, you'll find it. That's probably the easiest way to find it.
How do you get your book published, i.e. episodes made into blogs and make it into a book?
So how do you get a book published? Sorry, was that the question?
I think possibly, Margaret, let me know if I've got this wrong, but for instance, I think she's wondering if you've got episodes that you can turn into blogs and then turn that into a book, possibly.
You could do, so you could do, what I do is when I have my podcast edited, I put it into Dropbox. Other services are available. And what Dropbox will do now is it'll actually transcribe the whole audio for you. So that saves you a lot of typing, which you can then either go through and make that into a blog, or what I sometimes do from a show note point of view is I'll copy and paste the transcript, put it into something like ChatGPT or Gemini or Google Gemini and ask it to make show notes from that. And then I go through and edit it heavily. But rather than me going through literally thousands and thousands of words, it helps me, it saves me a lot of time. But you could take a transcript and then you could edit that. You could then make that into a blog. And there's no reason why you couldn't then make it into a book, particularly one that you're going to self-publish, because you can put whatever you want in there. Yeah, no, there's no reason why you couldn't do that at all.
What days would you suggest to release a podcast if it's for busy parents? Also, if the podcast is for children to listen to with parents, what days and times?
I mean, I put mine out on a Wednesday because it's the middle of the week. I think that's a good thing. I probably wouldn't bother I mean, there's some very successful podcasts that get released on Fridays, but I always think on Friday you're kind of like winding down. I think quite a few get released in that middle section of the week, like the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think for children, if it's something, for example, you want to do it so they can listen to it on the way to school with their parents, then you probably want to make sure it's out first thing on a Monday morning, so they've got it for the week. But you can do some research as well and ask your audience, when would they like to receive it? Just thinking about the ones that I've subscribed to, they appear at all sorts of times in my I use Apple in my podcast app. They appear at all sorts of different times. So that's a rubbish answer from my point of view. But I think on the positive, I don't think there is a one size fits all answer.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if it's something that, as you say, it's not like you need to listen to it live. You can play it when there's a good time, if that's on the drive to school or whatever. So
completely.
Another question. For those of us who are bilingual, would it be best to do 2 separate podcasts or all in one? Great question.
Oh, it's a good question. I think I'd probably do 2, I might release them at the same time, but then at least you're catering to both your audience, aren't you? I think you're the lady that speaks Welsh, aren't you? So you would do a Welsh version and an English version. Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, are your audience predominantly Welsh speaking or English speaking, or do they both speak English, or do they all speak Welsh? Do you need to do 2? I think I'm just going to look in the chat and see if you've commented. No, okay, that's fine. I think doing them both together, because I guess you'd kind of be repeating similar things, and that would mean that half the audience perhaps wouldn't necessarily understand the other half of the conversation. But there's no reason why you couldn't do a bilingual, for example, a Welsh version and an English version, release them at the same time, maybe have different cover artwork so people know which one's the Welsh one and which one's the English one. I think that could work quite effectively.
Yeah. Elizabeth has just said that she's in Anglesey. Most locals switch between both languages without kind of thinking. So maybe you could do that in the podcast. I'm not sure if it's, if it's an area.
Yeah, that's a fair point. If that is the way that your target audience speak, then yeah, I don't think there's a wrong answer. It might be a really good thing to test. So to test the different versions and to see which one people like the most, ask them their honest feedback, see which ones get the most listens.
Awesome. Any more questions? Please do pop them in the chat or the Q&A.
So it's been a lovely session. Thank you. So I think when you do sessions and people are interactive, it's a complete game changer.
Absolutely. There's been so much love for you, Ria. It's been lovely to see.
Oh, well, The love is coming right back at you all.
Do you have any final words of wisdom?
No, I think just go for it. If you're thinking about doing it, don't worry. I think we can overanalyze so much about, oh, should we, shouldn't we, should we, shouldn't we? Just do it. Worst case, you've learned a load of new skills, but it could be something really incredible. So I would just say, I mean, I genuinely think today's presentation has hopefully been helpful. Giving you lots of ideas, hopefully giving you a bit of inspiration to just give it a go. It's not, honestly, if I can do it, anybody can. Actually, I've just looked in the chat and Ashley says, what is the best that can happen? That's my word of wisdom. Words of wisdom, I'm stealing them straight from Ashley.
Incredible. Oh, well, thank you so much again. Thank you to everyone for coming, and Ria for such a great session. I'm sure you have lots of people getting in touch with lots of questions, and I'll keep an eye out for your podcast with Ashley. So
awesome. I'm excited for it. Thank you so much.
well, take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.